Hello, I'm Hugo Prévost, and this is episode number 11 of SVGA, your PC retro gaming podcast. With me, as always, my good friend Robert Hills. Hello, Robert.
Hello, Hugo. How's it going?
It's going good. It's great. I have a few days off, and the sun is out, so that's fun. We're looking towards another lockdown, but that's life, I guess.
Well, yeah, it's just the way it goes these days.
Exactly. Before we begin, I would like to point out that if you like what you hear, there's no way to support us. On the website, pf.ca, just click on the link called Support Us. That's convenient. It's on the right side of the page. There's a way to make a regular contribution, or you can also help by shopping on our special store on Humble Bundle if you're looking for fun games to play. So now that's out of the window, Robert, let's talk about espionage and light goggles that go boing.
Oh, good. I was hoping you'd actually do the noise. Yeah. Yeah, we're talking Splinter Cell today.
Exactly. Splinter Cell going back to 2002, developed by Ubisoft Montreal. And that's one of the points I want to talk about first is that if you remember the opening credits of the game, it's all packed with actions and planes flying and American flags waving, and it's all very, very serious. And there's names like Patrick Tremblay, and there's an explosion. It's like Gontran. It's all very Quebecois, and it's all really, really fun because it's all so American and so not American at the same time.
Yeah. It's a really big culture clash in some ways.
Exactly. If I don't know if you could, I know it's all a bit complicated. If you could try to talk about the scenario of the game.
Yeah, well, it is complicated, and don't want to give too much away the plot because I actually think it is an interesting plot. But essentially, you are a spy operative guy in part of the NSA who at the time probably wasn't as much reviled as it is now, since we've learned a bunch about mass spying and stuff. But anyways, that's not important. This is video games. So you're this spy in this very small little covert team where basically you go in and you do the dirty work that is I think extra legal would be the euphemism for it, but basically you go in and you kill a bunch of Russians or Georgians.
Yeah, Georgians first and then Russians after.
Yes, exactly.
That's basically it. There's a plot involving the Georgian president, which eventually turns into, I think we can talk about this a bit, a war against the US. And then there's other powers involved. We won't really spoil, like you said, but yeah, there's basically a covert war, and then you have to execute a bunch of missions to retrieve. I think it's mostly retrieve documents.
Yeah, you do
sometimes people.
Yeah, it's a lot of and it's a lot of gadgets. You have like laser microphones and. Your night vision goggles, which we can get way more into. But yeah, it's a lot of, it's kind of techno spying, but also very physical spying of just like, well, I found the files, now I can go. Yeah,
there's a lot of just picking data sticks up and then checking if is there a code on said data stick, and can I use that code to open the door, and then I go to the next room, and it was, I have to say, I know it's one of the games that you like a lot. Mm-hmm. It was a first experience for me, and I heard about the game, of course, over the years. It's the maybe less now, but at the time it had quite a cultural impact, I'd say. I made a joke about the goggles, but the three-headed goggles, the special goggles that your character wears.
It's the third eye lets you see the aura of your enemies.
Yeah. but yeah, so it's all the infiltration, and it was I guess at a time when infiltration games were not maybe as highly regarded as they are now. it was really much more of a you get in, you shoot everyone, and you get out.
Yeah.
And it's really you follow a corridor and then you shoot the bad guys. And suddenly it was, oh, you have to be covered about this. I mean, you can shoot people, but there's sound the alarm, and you're not really a killer. The precision is not really there,
No.
and so you have to be, like I said, covered.
Yeah, well, and one of the interesting things about it is to like really go back with the retro idea of, this podcast is it's actually kind of the game that I think they originally wanted to do with Wolfenstein 3D, because they wanted you to be able to like knock out guards, hide bodies, and all kinds of stuff, but it was just too complicated. It wasn't possible. And here, 10, 15 years later, it's possible, and it's fun. I mean, it's a game that requires a lot of patience. It's not something you're going to get through in an afternoon. And it's, one thing it really did for me, as someone who, plays a lot of shooters and that kind of thing, is I spent a lot of time crouching. I don't spend a lot of time running. I crouch around and I'm very slow. Like I play a lot of, when I play like Fallout or something, it's like, okay, I'm going to creep up on these guys, silenced weapons, all that kind of thing. And it's all of that because I spent a lot of time playing Splinter Cell, and you moving slowly, staying in the dark, and shooting as few bullets as quietly as possible are like these things that just get ingrained in you.
That's interesting because for me it was the another Tom Clancy game was Ghost Recon, which is not exactly the same thing. I mean, you play a soldier in these series of games. I guess they're up to 5 or 6, or they completely changed the context also. But basically, you are a soldier operating in Georgia, so that's another. And eventually, Russia's involved, and so on and so on. But it was a type of game where there was no health bars. I mean, there was one, but basically you could get killed in one shot.
Yeah.
And you could also kill enemies in one shot. But basically you had to, like you did, crouch around, be silent, move really, really slowly. And I want to hear you on the topic of stealth mechanics in games. Because we both played a lot of games over the years. The developers tried, I think, really, really hard, notably with Splinter Cell, to provide a semi-realistic stealth experience. I mean, as hard as they could go to.
Yeah.
But I felt like what I played of the game, and I've looked a bit about for Let's Plays 2 on YouTube, and what I felt was you cannot really have a real stealth experience in a game for a bunch of reasons. For once, you cannot be there in the room. Maybe it's in VR, it could be better, but for once, you have to rely on mostly visual clues to move around. And also because if it was realistic, we wouldn't last 5 seconds in that type of game.
No.
Because basically what you use in Splinter Cell, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you basically stay in the dark. Most of the time you try to stay in the dark, you hide the bodies in the dark, you shoot lights, you shoot down cameras, but all this, and I've seen a sequence where the character is on the ledge outside, and it's the only space that's in the dark, relatively dark, of all the area, and the guard just comes out, looks at us, and say, "Oh, there's nothing there," and moves out. And it's you're crouched on the ledge outside. Of course, he's going to see you. Of course, he's going to know you're there.
Yeah.
But for the game purposes, you have to believe that you're hidden.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's sort of the thing, is that, you're told in your training that, which is basically just what they did at the time in a lot of these games is you did boot camp or training or whatever, and it taught you all the mechanics. This, I think, is better than a lot of the other ones because there are, more mechanics than just kind of like jumping and crouching. But But anyways, one of the things they talk about is how on your suit or whatever, there are all these light sensors. And so you have a little bar that shows, how bright it is on
Yeah.
you and how visible you are. And like you say, you do have to suspend your disbelief a little bit. Because, I mean, for one thing, in video games, even then, and here, like the light, dynamic lighting and particle effects existed. Like the game looks pretty good, but it's still, there are pretty sharp lines between light and dark. And I mean, yeah, a lot of it takes place at night, but also a lot of it takes place inside where, it's pretty hard in most buildings these days, like to find a dark corner in every hallway.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Yeah. I mean, you make a good point that it's not like this isn't how it would actually work. Like you can't imagine a guy in his 40s or 50s like this dude crouching around on his knees all the time. For one, like just starting there, like the man has incredible knees. Sam has just unbelievable. Like I couldn't crouch around like that.
Couldn't that either. I mean, I tried to do that to prove a point to my my SO earlier today, and just squatting once was painful. So I cannot imagine being squatted or crouched for hours at a time. And the funny thing is, talking about crouching, there's a way to move around really, really discreetly, which is being crouched and slowly tapping the move forward key. And then you look like a toad moving forward. And it works. It looks ridiculous, but it works. And I mean, it's mostly the thing with these type of games. I mean, when the game is, and even with more recent games, but when you play this that they were limited in their options.
Yeah.
And that's the case, like I said, for a lot of games that we talk about on this podcast. But I mean, you look at they were, I think, really, really proud of their physics models for the drapes. There's a bunch of times where you move through drapes and they move around, they flap around, and then you're on the other end of the room, and you turn around and they're still flapping. And
yeah.
And somewhere in Ubisoft Montreal, there's someone that's really, really proud of this. And but yeah, I see where they were going with this, and we talked a bit before the show, and I told you I really like the experience, even with all the limitations that they impose on this. But going back to stealth mechanics, because I'm guessing you've played maybe a game from the Far Cry series or any shooter where there's always a stealth mission and it's always shit. Sorry for the bad word, but it's always, you're moving around and then there's this indicator on the top of your HUD that's growing or coloring itself red or something. And then at a certain point, you've been discovered and it's mission over. And I'm trying to think about one game where it's a perfect stealth mechanic. I cannot think about one.
Yeah, I don't know that the perfect stealth mechanic exists. I know that some games do it better than others, and they're all... I mean, I think Thief is sort of an earlier version, like the same idea as this, bow and arrow sword stuff. That this uses a lot of the same kind of ideas of, if you're walking on stone or tile, it's much louder than carpet, for example. But yeah, I don't know that really once kind of Thief set that and then Splinter Cell sort of, cemented it, that this is kind of the stealth mechanic is you crouch, you go slow, you stay in the shadows, and then that's kind of it.
I mean, that's quite okay. I'm okay with this. It's not that it's not good, but there was a point where, I don't know, for example, you cannot really know, unless you try multiple times, cannot really know when you're going to be seen or not.
Mhm.
I don't know if you remember the very first level where you get into a police precinct,
Oh yeah.
and there's a point where you're in a room with two people that are hunched on their computers in the dark for a
Yeah.
reason, and you just
Yeah.
move behind them. And I mean, once again, you can be silent, but there's no one's going to be that silent when you're at 5 meters from the guy, and he's not going to hear you or see you.
Well, I mean, here's the thing: is we don't actually know that. I mean, if someone was that silent, we'd never hear of them.
That's one way to put it. But
I mean,
yeah,
this is the best of the best of just a guy who can walk around crouched.
Yeah, a 40.
This is the absolute peak of stealth performance. So
a 40-year-old man with knees of steel,
yeah,
and just moving around silently.
He can carry around the bulkiest henchman for as long as he needs to.
Yeah,
but he's just going to walk a little slower.
And we haven't even talked about all these technicians in the security rooms that are saying, "Oh my God, the image from the security camera has gone down. It's the third one." I'm sure everything's fine. I'm sure.
You seem to be getting a lot closer to the most secure room in the building. It's nothing to worry about.
But like you said, you have to suspend your. Yeah, there's a suspense of disbelief. You have to give the game credit where it's due. I mean, it's still fun. It's completely. It's not. I mean, we're not playing games for them to be really realistic. I mean,
no.
For Christ's sake, we're playing Elite Dangerous on our free time, or some other space simulators or stuff like that. So
actually, I've been playing some pretty serious flight sims that they get really into realism, but I mean that's completely different.
But still, when we play a game,
I mean,
we want a dose of realism, but not too much,
right.
Because at that point we just maybe better off just learning to do the damn thing for a living and just working. That's
right.
I mean, we're not. Hopefully, there won't be any podcast simulator game or something like that. We have to record a fake podcast and then upload it to your host, the provider, or something like that.
Oh, give it time.
I mean, there's a game called YouTuber Simulator, I think. So it's getting there.
Yeah, that's like. There's, I mean, Euro Truck Simulator and that stuff. Yeah. There's a lawn mowing one coming out now.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah. So just don't. All I'm saying is don't get too confident because podcast simulator is.
There's also a game where you have to build your PC. So that's anyway. What did you think about the interface of the game?
Okay, so I when I first played this, it was on Xbox and then like PlayStation, and I think it actually works a bit better with a controller because when you've got the sticks, you can, for example, control your movement a lot easier than either the tapping method or using your mouse wheel to speed up or slow down. It's a lot more intuitive. You press it a little bit or you press it a lot, and you get you go fast or slow depending on how much you press it, and that I think works better. But it's also like an interface I'm like very familiar with because you talk about the first level in the police precinct. Well, that specific part was the demo for the game. Mm-hmm. So I have played that like the precinct over and over and over. Like I didn't remember the codes, but I remembered where every guy was. Like, I go in this room, that room. And so it's kind of fun because I spent a lot of time like screwing around in that one. Like, oh, can I lure this guy into the drunk tank or whatever and then jump on top of him and, knock him out that way. And anyway, so I find the interface good, but the not having an analog stick actually does make it a little more difficult than it does on a console.
It's interesting. I obviously didn't play it on console, tried it on PC, but one thing that surprised me was, and maybe it was a part of the design rules at the time, but it's not usually the controls you're used to in a game. It's not, for example, it's to use something, it's space, I think, instead of E or F or whatever it is. And when you want to switch an item for your inventory, it's control and then select, and it's um, it's a bit strange,
Mm-hmm.
and you get used to it. But I remember for the first level was having I needed to go back a few times to the settings menu to just see what were the keys to use in that kind of situation.
Yeah.
And there was also, I think, a bit of, beside all the stealth aspects, there was also a bit of, you have sometimes to be pixel perfect almost to be able to do something. I remember learning to do something like wall jump in the
Oh yeah.
tutorial,
Those were
but yeah, but there's a time when you have to get in the police precinct, and you know that you have to get up on that
yeah.
trash
You
dumpster, and
jump and then I've fallen off.
yeah, and
Even
then
I did
jump,
that.
and
You
it's basically it's that you can see where the ledge is, and you
mhm.
can feel that if you give yourself a big enough of a boost or a swing, you'll just be able to grab it. But no, you have to wall jump and time it perfect, and it's. I meant, okay, you have to. They want us to use the mechanics that they
Yeah.
programmed it, but it felt a bit forced, maybe.
Sometimes yeah. And one thing they did in later version, like sequels and so on, is the mechanics got a little smoother and
Yeah.
things like that were a little more automated. Where in this, they're manual. But I don't think those games ended up being as good because I think what really works in this one is sort of the novelty of it, but also they had the story and the vision they had for the game really worked a lot better than later ones, even though the later ones refined a lot of those kind of
Mm-hmm.
issues. So it kind of, there's some good and some bad
Yeah.
in that.
I mean, if I can trace a parallel, and you can stop me if you think it's too much from left field, but I recently replayed Fear,
Okay. Yeah.
the first-person shooter, and from 2005, and I saw recently a few videos talking, how the AI is good, how the shooting is good, how the lighting is good, and so on and so on. And I replayed it, and yeah, it was, the lighting is fantastic, the AI is really good, but you feel like it's a bit clunky.
Hmm.
And I remember it was from a few years back, but playing Fear 2 and seeing that, it's much smoother, but yeah, the it feels more like a generic shooter instead of the first one. And I feel like this sometimes when a franchise gets something like maybe surprising success. I don't know if they expected Splinter Cell to do well when they launched it, but it feels like, okay, we have to expand the expand the field, if you want, to reach the
Yeah.
the most people possible in order to sell more copies, instead of working with what's already good and just making it better.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I mean, it's like in the review I wrote for the website a while ago about Project Cars 3, which
Yeah.
is a racing game. And anyways, they took what was kind of a simulation sort of racing game, very serious about like a lot of like if you wanted to, you can change all sorts of things with your car about the spring compression and like in many ways too complex. And then I think in an attempt to reach more people, they went too far the other way, and it's more of an arcade thing. In an attempt to reach more people,
Yeah.
and they went too far in that respect, and sort of you lose a lot of what is special about the thing you had and what people like in trying to dumb it down or make it too easy. And I think there's a balance there you have to take. Like you can make your controls a bit smoother and you can find those things that didn't work with your mechanics. But you also have to remember that there are sometimes it's the quirks that make the game
Yeah.
rather than ruin it.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I mean, there's another example. I play a lot of Factorio, which is a base building game and resource management in a sense. But yeah, so I play a lot of Factorio, and it's a bird's eye view, so you see yourself from the air. It's all in basically 2D. And I thought for a while, oh, maybe it would be cool to have a 3D view, to have a first person view, to see basically at the ground level what I'm building and see the size of the stuff I'm putting down. And then came out Satisfactory, which is basically Factorio but at the ground level. And I started playing it and was like, oh no, I want to go back to
Yeah.
I want to go back to Factorio to see. I want to see from up there what I'm building. So basically, I'm never happy with what I want. But yeah, there's, like you said, there's a maybe I need to find a balance in order to uh, have a better game. But in that sense, is it then necessary? If you find a balance, is it necessary to call it a sequel, or could you just have a patch out? What do you think about this?
Well, I think that comes down to the idea of they still need to sell stuff, and
Yeah,
it's one thing when it's like something like Splinter Cell. I ended up buying it for PlayStation 3, I think, when it came out. Like, they did a remastered version, and I think that's where you can not just do sort of refining of graphics, but like, oh, hey, these are some other refinements we made. And I think in something like that, it makes a lot of sense, because I imagine doing full game mechanics might be too difficult.
yeah.
But I think when you're talking about remastered versions, you don't want to completely change them, because again, like, the quirks are sort of part of what, makes people nostalgic for old stuff. But at the same time, you can take away the things that are annoying or dumb or just didn't quite work.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good place for that kind of thing is sort of reissues and remasters.
Would you recommend Splinter Cell then?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, even with its sort of quirks and, the jumping issues occasionally and all that kind of stuff, it's like, it's a really fun game. It's a really fun game, and it's one that you do have to spend time with, because again, like, it's not a fast paced game. It's not, it's slow. It's like third person. Before, like, third person was seen as more of a faster thing. There's not a lot of like cutscenes or whatever to jump the action ahead. It's you do a lot of sneaking around, and sneaking around can take a lot of time. And, knocking a guy out, hiding him in a closet so no one else finds him. Like, it just takes time, and you have to, do that. But it's really worth it. And one other thing about it is it really, it focuses a lot on gadgets, which we haven't talked a ton about, but like, there's night vision, you can see through walls with thermal vision, and that sort of stuff was a little more novel at the time as like a game mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, so that novelty isn't really there, but I think it still works as like it really has most of the package, even if some of it doesn't fully work. It's not like those issues break it. They just make parts of it a little more frustrating maybe than they need to be.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I will also recommend the game, maybe not for a bit less my taste, mayy.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I'm
that's
actually surprised you liked it as much as you did.
I mean, I'm trying to keep an open mind. Maybe it's easy to, especially in these trying times. It's easy to just be grumpy. I feel and I do a lot of that, I have to admit. But to watch a movie, to try to read a book, to try to play a game, and just be, oh, it's not fun. It's different. I have to think. But I really tried to see it as first a game of its time. Mm-hmm. We talked a bit about the quirks and the bugs and the jumping issues and so on, but also as a way to experience something differently. I'm used to just clear my mind and play some stupid shooter where everybody's crouching and then they're popping back up to shoot,
Yeah.
and just have to wait. You talked about gadget, and yeah, we didn't really talk about them, but I really like the sort of snake you used to see with a camera on the end,
Oh
sort
yeah.
of. Yeah, you
Put it
used to,
under the door.
yeah, use
Or
it. You put it under the door to see what's on the other side. And I remember I went through the first level just opening doors like a moron, and and I was lucky because no one saw me. But yeah, that kind of thing where you have to think to take your time, like you said, take your time to prepare your actions. I feel like there's still a bit of luck involved.
Mhm.
Um, like I said, I watch a bit of a let's play, and the guy knows perfectly where everybody is, and he just knows when to wait and when to go. And I felt like, oh, if it was me, I would have to start again 5 or 10 times, maybe just to be sure to do exactly what I need to do. So I feel it's an interesting game for something they call, is it tactical espionage? Is that the right term?
Tactical espionage is probably a good enough euphemism for it. Yeah.
So anyway, if you want to try it, I think it's sold on Humble Bundle. You have to use Origin, which we won't talk about here, which is basically Ubisoft's launcher. I mean, it works fine on my PC. I don't know if you had any problem with it.
No, I didn't, and I was able to find a download for the HD textures that they redid for the PlayStation 3.
Oh,
So I can we can put that link in the show notes.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, that was maybe I should have done this also, but yeah, still playing it with the 2002 textures. That's quite okay. I think
Yeah,
it's
no, I think the game looked fine. It's just I found this thing and it worked fairly easily. It's not, you do have to, you should back up your old thing and then you just copy this new folder in and it's fine. But it's one of those. It's not necessary, but if you're interested, it's out there and we'll link to it.
well, that's good to know. And that concludes episode number 11 of SVGA. Thank you, Robert.
Oh,
And
thank you, Hugo. It was a pleasure as always.
exactly, for me too, of course. And thank you to everyone listening right now. You can catch all our previous episodes on pieuvre.ca. We are also on Balado Quebec, on Apple Podcast, and on Spotify. If you like the show, don't forget to give us a 5-star rating and leave a comment. It always helps. See you next time.
Bye, everyone.